I hereby call to order this meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee on June 11, 2025 at 7 p.m. I am Linda Lukovsky, Chair of the School Committee. I want to welcome everyone here tonight. A reminder that this meeting is being audio and video recorded. I'm going to read our vision statement. We are a community of learners known for unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families and the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners, students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Class of 25 retirees. With the end of the school year, we not only say goodbye to the graduating seniors, we also say a sad farewell to our retiring staff members. I want to thank each of you for the time and energy you have poured into the young people of the Triton Regional School District. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent, but I wanted to acknowledge each of you by name with our sincere thanks. The district, Deborah McKinnon, instructional teacher for 13 years of service, Newbury Elementary School. Judith Canning, instructional assistant, 19 years of service. Carol Jacobson, kindergarten teacher, 21 years of service. Leah Pericott, grade 3, teacher, 25 years of service. Beth Yendo, principal for 12 years of service at Salisbury Elementary. Custodian Chase Larry, 29 years of service. And one of the teachers that was one of my children's teachers, Kim Peterson, grade 5 teacher, 24 years of service. Middle school, Christina Stuccio, special education teacher, 25 years of service. Nancy Carncross, special education teacher, 13 years of service. Kathleen Godfrey Hotchizer, instructional assistant, 6 years of service. High school, Donna Anderson, physical education teacher, 31.5 years of service. Cheryl Caracocco, special education teacher, 18 years of service. And Kathy Norton, math teacher, 20 years of service. For those of you who are here, could you please stand? I personally want to thank you for your many years of service.
So I will just echo, and Deb and Kim, thank you for showing up tonight. It is great to see you both. I think this speaks of so we have a baker's dozen again this year retiring. We had a few years post-COVID where we had big numbers of retirement groups, but this is our second year with 13, and collectively 255 years of service to the district for the 13 of you. So it is always hard to say goodbye to history and experience, and the two of you who are here tonight, along with the other 11, has been some incredible history, incredible legacy of instruction, of pouring into kids and families in your passions, right, in the classroom, 4th grade, 3rd grade, Kim, and instrumental for you, Deb. So thank you both for bringing your passion, and again, the other 11 who couldn't be here tonight. Thank you for bringing your passion. I know you can tell when you speak to a retiree. Deb and I were talking about this last night. There are some that run for the door, and others that it's a really long and labored decision. And I know I can speak for the two of you sitting here tonight. These are not easy decisions to make because this has been your life, this has been your passion that has shown. And I know that folks around this table as parents, and I certainly as an administrator can say thank you, and because we've seen it, right? There's nothing you have to prove, nothing left to prove. We've watched it in action, and so it's a simple thank you very much for everything you've done. And since there's only two, maybe they want to have a speech or something? Probably not. So that's a no from Kim. Was that a no from Deb too? Yes. Gotta love a performer, always happy to come to the microphone.
And although I encourage you to stay for the whole meeting, please don't feel obligated. The consent agenda contains one donation tonight from David Hollowell from Math Supplies and Techs for the high school. Yeah, I did.
Keep going back up.
Notice I don't have my mouse today.
Sorry. Oh, you don't have your mouse?
What's in my book?
That I can't help you with.
The next item is the student attendance report and plan recommendation. The district absenteeism committee is going to provide a recommendation for the new policy language and a plan to improve student attendance.
Do you want the consent agenda approved? No? Okay.
Thank you. This year, we had a team that put together a school attendance plan to help with consistency across the board, across schools, when dealing with attendance. So tonight, I just want to say quickly that Kyle Campbell was on that team, and he's here, and Julie Godbout, and Sean Godbout. So they're all here too to support, and because of just other conflicts, the rest of the team wasn't able to make it, but Jane is here to present and to talk about the plan, and then I can talk after about the policy and the handbook that will align with the plan.
Thank you. You took my first slide. That's okay. So again, I just want to echo that we had an entire committee made up of constituents across the district to help put together this plan. And I joined the party late, but the work that was being done was really remarkable. So I was very proud to be a part of this committee. There was a lot of dedication and thoughtful collaboration on their part. So again, thank you very much. So this policy, Triton Regional School District is committed to developing a culture of consistent attendance, recognizing its critical role in student success. The Triton Regional School Attendance Plan is designed to proactively address and reduce chronic absenteeism through a multi-tiered system of support. So our objective was to create a proactive plan that was developed through the lens of 5 different strategies, and accompanying that would be a tiered approach to make sure that all students' needs were being met when it came to attendance and addressing chronic absenteeism across the district. So we have our first tier, which addresses the students and all of the students. Second tier is targeted support, and the third tier is intensive support for students who hit that chronic absenteeism mark. The 5 core strategies incorporate analyzing current attendance data and practices to ensure that early identification and intervention is provided, to engage families and stakeholders in the supportive process, implementing a tiered system of support that is inclusive, has universal prevention strategies, targeted interventions, and intensive support, again, for those Tier 3 students. It's about building capacity through effective systems and to promote equity and access by addressing the root causes of absenteeism. So I just popped up a few examples of what falls under each tier. There's a lot to the plan, but this highlights kind of those key components of just making sure that school-based teams are created to track and monitor student attendance. So the first step is to make sure that school-based teams are created so that we can keep a track of all the students' attendance, whether they're core in the core Tier 1 section, Tier 2, or Tier 3. to communicate attendance awareness with families, to follow the DCAP, along with supporting attendance for all students, to promote a positive school environment, and to promote and educate families on community resources. Tier 2 then moves into addressing students who are at risk for chronic absenteeism. They have not quite hit that threshold yet, but we see them trending towards more habitual absences. We provide more intensive supports where we're monitoring the students' attendance more closely in Aspen, providing interventions, actions, and family outreach early on, identifying potential barriers that may be impacting them and their ability to come to school, making sure that we're referring to students to either IST, which is the instructional support team, or SST, which is the student support team, depending on building. Some buildings call it different things. Referrals to school and community supports when it's needed. And then in Tier 3, when a student does hit that chronic absenteeism threshold, again, we're just continuing to monitor, provide more higher level interventions and actions. Again, keep communicating with the families and keeping them engaged in the process. Creating individual attendance plans for students, recognizing improved attendance when they are trending in the positive, providing regular, consistent contact with families, and integrating and communicating with outside agencies. And that's pretty much an overview of the attendance plan that the committee created. So I thank you again for your time tonight to hear what we put together.
And I just want to add that the idea of this plan, the overall, was to strengthen our Tier 1 and to really get involved at Tier 2 so that we can catch those students and support those families before moving to Tier 3. And if you have any questions.
So first of all, thank you for this, and I appreciate this because looking at the numbers, right, that are out on DESE's site, it is pretty shocking how many of our students miss schools. I have two questions for you. One of them is just, I guess, more of interest. When I was looking down the list of who's on the group, one of the people that I most identify with sort of heading off student absence is the nurses, and I didn't see a nurse on there. Is there a reason why? Was that a choice, or was that just you're looking at this more from a mental health standpoint, or?
Yeah, when we put this committee together, I reached out to principals, and we really did focus on the counseling, on the counselors, because the nurses absolutely are dealing with the absenteeism, but the counselors are the kind of like the first line and are dealing with the parents and kind of supporting the students throughout the day. And so the first thing we did was look at things that are already in place, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So yeah, we did focus on the counselors at that time.
Okay, all right. And I guess my other question is, how do you plan to sort of address the contradiction, I would almost call it, or contrast between asking students to be in class every single day and every single week the School Digest coming out with the please keep your child home if they have any of these symptoms until they subside? Because I just feel like it's, I've always struggled, I guess, with the idea of perfect attendance, just because we want, if someone's not well, we want them to stay home and not contaminate the rest of their class.
Absolutely.
But I would argue that for some kids, like, they're going to be incentivized by that perfect attendance award, and parents as well could use it as an incentive to tell that kid, like, take a Tylenol and go to school.
Absolutely.
And I'm just a little bit worried, I guess, about that, about how that could affect the bigger, kind of macrocosm, not necessarily that individual kid, but if they're coming in with the flu, even the beginning of the flu, right, what's that doing to the rest of the class?
So throughout the entire time that we've created this plan, we talked so much about we have to recognize why the absences are happening, and we have to treat them differently if they're medical absences or, if a student is experiencing mental health or school avoidance. So first we have to recognize what's happening with the absences, why the absences are happening. And then that's why in the plan, we kind of focused on improved attendance. We didn't focus on as much like perfect attendance because we do understand students are going to be absent. But if we have a student who's chronically absent or having a difficult time getting to school, we want to focus on these are the things we're going to put in place to support you and your family, and we want to recognize when they have improved attendance. So we're hoping that. We're also talked a lot about, I have met with the nurses about this, and we have talked about, we have, I think it's Attendance Works. They have those flyers, and they do talk about when to keep your child home and when not to. So just education for the parents and really reaching out to the families I was actually just touching base with Kyle today about it, and we were looking at kids who were in the tier 2, and we were actually looking, to say this student might be in tier 2 because they had COVID this year. So they might have missed all those days because they're absent. And those are the times that we'll kind of, decide how will we handle that, and we'll handle it very differently. Did you want to, I don't know if there's anything you want to add?
No, I think it was definitely, to echo Shannon, it was something that came up a lot in conversation, because I can think of students even in my school that there's reasons why their attendance is impacted this year for a plethora of reasons. So keeping that in mind when we're looking at each student individually and kind of creating those plans for the students. Obviously, we don't want kids coming to school to school sick. Some of the communication that is on Attendance Works does a nice job kind of delineating what is sick, what is okay to come to school. We have some families that the child has a slight cold and they don't send them for a week. So it's finding that balance. And again, I think a key component to this, which is I think going to be a lot of work, to be honest, up front, but is really at the beginning catching it and having those conversations with families to just maybe help to get them to understand like those little nuances like you're talking, like so it doesn't become something that if a child is really sick, of course we would not want them to come to school. I know I don't want to go to school when I'm sick. So, I hear what you're saying. I think it's a good point. It's something that we definitely considered when we were creating this plan.
I will say that's why we actually, through our conversations, we included the sentence, educators are encouraged to exercise their professional judgment when selecting and implementing interventions, taking into account the unique needs, circumstances, and strengths of each student. So that was something that we actually put in at the end through conversations to make sure that educators are aware this is a guide, but please make sure you take into account the student.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate everything else in here. I think I'm going to have a hard time getting behind this just because of the perfect attendance piece. I read through the letters that are, linked in there, and I'm just struggling with that piece.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so the next thing that, in order to align with the attendance plan, we looked at the handbook, what's in the handbook, and we took each handbook, the elementary handbook, the middle school handbook, and the high school handbook. They each had a different kind of attendance policy in them, so we all looked at each one and we integrated it all into one. And most importantly, because we wanted parents to see the differeces of when you're in elementary school and moving up, what the expectations are for attendance. So we felt that each handbook should have the same attendance policy in it. So the biggest changes that we made, we had to align with our plan, is we did add the tiered interventions. And the biggest changes were under the consequences of excessive absences. And we more identified, what could happen if your student does have excessive absences. Again, it's one of those things where you're going to take into account why is that student absent, and what is the best way to help support the family and the student in those areas. So the high school also had change from administrative failure to a credit loss with absences. So that was a big change in the handbook. And then there was the middle school added consequences for being tardy to school, because through research, if a student is tardy, that eventually it could move towards more absences and being chronically absent. So we wanted to try to show how important it is to come to school on time and be there for the whole day. So the middle school did add some consequences for tardies and for tracking the tardies. And then I just want to say, under intervention for chronic absenteeism, I do realize that we have to align that with our policy. That's one thing I missed. So those statements will be changed to align with our plan and the new policy that I'm about to discuss. So this handbook, I'm just presenting it now. It will be approved through when the handbook is approved.
Can you talk a little bit more about the credit loss part of it, and how making up the work that you missed plays into that?
Sean, are you okay with coming and talk about that? Because Sean and Liz Pacheco really worked on that part of it for the high school. Do you need it? Let me know if you need to see it.
Is it on? There we go. So I'm just going off the top of my head here, but welcome. Hi, everyone. So with the thoughts behind the credit loss instead of the administrative failure was, so right now in the high school, I know Owen is very familiar with our policy, is that if you hit 5 absences in any individual class, so say you're in English 9, and on the 5th absence in that class, it's triggered what's called an FA, so an administrative failure. So that would mean your grade, no matter what it is, you could have a 90, and it's going to go to a 55. So that's the current policy. If the grade is below a 55, it stays at that grade. So if you have a 26, it would be a 26. So our thought behind the credit loss was that it just doesn't feel right that we're changing a teacher's grade. That was kind of the consensus on the team. A lot of surrounding districts, we spent a lot of time kind of looking at, what other districts are doing, and a great majority of districts are going to what's called the credit loss. So that being said, there's going to be opportunities for students to be able to regain that credit throughout the school year. So we just want to make sure that that's highlighted.
I'm still not clear on how, so you're going to take away a credit at 5 days, and then how do they earn it back?
So it's a full year course. After 8 unexcused absences, it would result in what's called a credit loss. In a semester course, it would be 4 unexcused absences. That would be a credit loss. And then it says 25 plus total unexcused absences. The key is unexcused for the year would, again, result in a credit loss. But there will be opportunities throughout the year for credit to be remade. So I believe we talked about credit recovery through EduSeer as a possible opportunity, as well as Saturday schools, as well as staying after school during the week as well. Have been some ideas that have been talked about.
Can I just clarify on that too, so that I'm understanding it?
Sure, yeah.
So a student could have, say, a B+ in a class, but not get the credits for that class for graduation. Is that?
Technically, if they don't make up the time for what's lost, yes.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding. So they can't technically retake that class. They have to make up that class, but they couldn't retake it in, say, in place of an elective.
So they would
later
still
on in
have
their
to
high school
retake
career.
the class
Okay.
to
Oh,
get the
what?
credit.
So it's not during the current,
During the current year, they can make up the time and still get the credit, but
Okay.
if they don't do that, then they would have to retake the class to get the
Okay.
credit.
all right, thank you.
Yeah,
Can I just ask a quick, just for clarification?
sure.
What do you mean make up the time? So if the student has a B+, they've done the work, the teacher has said,
Sure.
you're proficient above so, but you are missing, so what does making up the time kind of look like? Because I can see a point of contention when you have a parent or guardian sitting there and saying, well,
Sure.
the teacher considered them proficient. What does making up the time look like?
Again, it's going to be that, through credit recovery or staying after school.
What will they be doing during that time? I'm sorry.
So Liz couldn't be here, Liz Pacheco, so she would probably be able to answer that best because she headed this. But I would say, like, we can offer credit recovery through Eduseer. So Eduseer can offer their shorter courses where students do that over the summer. We had talked about Saturday classes, so I'm assuming it would be working with the teacher. What does this student need to make up in order to earn this credit for this class? So we'd have to determine what the student needs. Like I said, I would rather have Liz answer that because I know she worked closely with Sean on this. So I can get that answer exactly what they have in mind for what students need. But I do know, like we talked about, we did talk about after school, whether it's Saturday school, whether it's over the summer. And I will say that we did do a lot of research. We spoke to other schools. We went to a attendance workshop, and a lot of the schools were moving away from the changing of the grade. And it was pretty much, that was a lot of it, that, changing a student's grade when they have a grade didn't seem right for a lot of schools, so they were moving to the credit recovery, meaning they lose the credit and then you give them a chance to make it up. And I'm sorry I can't clarify further, but I'll get that information for you, for sure.
Changing of the grade also impact their GPA at the end? Right, so this would-
Yes, yep, that would impact there.
I just asked, I'm not high schools, but part of the conversation I remember was when you have like a student who's at 90, they have an A, and all of a sudden they've hit a bumpy patch and they have all these unexcused absences, and the policy is just automatically changing that student's grade to a 55, correct? Then that impacts their GPA down the line when they go to graduate and apply for colleges. So I'm thinking that might have also been part of that conversation, I know, being at one of the meetings that was talked about, so. But I
Right, to
just-
clarify, that's the practice now and has been.
Yeah.
FAs
So I
have
don't
been
think
the
it's a
rule of
problem
land.
to move away from that. The concern that I have right now is the fact that if somebody is absent and they've made up the work, what are they doing in this recapture credit time if they've already made the work up? And the point of contention, I don't know if it's the same, that you're going to have arguments over that my kid's already made the work up and the grade is sufficient to pass. Why are you making them come in? And, are we providing transportation for them to get here? Are we paying teachers to come in outside of the workday? So there's a whole bunch of things that we need to talk about for this program to understand a little bit better.
So I will ask Sean, and I'm not sure if you, but right now, students, they fail, right? Or they get a administrative failure. So is there a chance for them to regain that right now?
As of right now, yes. So the
And how
current
does that-
policy stands is that if a student administratively fails a class, that they can submit a written appeal with a parent or guardian to the sitting assistant principal to have the administrative failure waived.
Okay, so that's something that and like I said, Liz was going to be here to present, and I'm sure she would have more of that information. I apologize that I don't. It was last minute. So we'll definitely get that. I was glad that Sean was here.
I was going in a slightly different direction, more on
Yep.
the teacher's side, where I've actually lived this credit recovery program, and there's a million ways to do it. I was just ensuring that an educator who's already taught the class, already provided the work, possibly even graded the missed work days, weeks later, and worked with the student, would then have to come back with almost like a third or fourth iteration of their lesson plan to provide a student, because yes, that's part of, so I just wanted to make sure that how that was being handled. So the bone of contention with like caregivers and parents, it's kind of all interconnected, where a teacher might be like, well, I've worked really hard with this student and I've ensured that the classwork they've missed has been gifted, I've graded, I've communicated, and then they enter credit recovery, and that same educator is now saying, now what? Like,
Right.
what more can I provide? So I wasn't sure what the plan kind of, for that.
Yeah,
'Cause I can
and-
see a
and-
lot of frustration and as an educator, just being like, I will find a fourth
Yeah.
way to go about this. And then also being on the other side, a parent, being like, I will watch them do that for the fourth time. So I just wasn't sure if there was a plan to kind of avoid that little piece where,
And I'll say, Liz, I know, has talked closely with Joe and with Patrick about this before when Sean and Liz added this part to the handbook, and this isn't going to be approved tonight. So I will get that information from you, and I will bring that back, or I'll, send that out to let you know exactly what the exact plan is for the credit recovery, for sure. Yes?
If it's any, I don't know if consolation is the right word, that's too loud. Both of the schools that I've worked in have gone this route, and first of all, I appreciate not changing the grade. I think it's important that grades reflect what students know and they can do, and that tends to muddy the waters then. But the scenarios that you're talking about, like I do agree there needs to be a plan, and we've always had a plan. I can't think of a time when they've arisen. It's usually been that if a student needs to make up the work, there's a lot more happening, and that goes on. But it's generally worked well. Like one of my roles right now is to liaise between the teachers and whoever's working with that to make those pieces come together, and it's been a good system.
Yeah, and I do know Liz has done a lot of research on this and a lot of work on it, so I'm going to let her speak to that for sure. So I'm going to get that information from her. I apologize that I don't have it.
I have a question on when a student does have tardiness, has absenteeism, and they do get these failures, and now they feel, what's the point of continuing to go to school because now I've failed all these classes? Is there supports or things in place to make sure that these students can or get encouraged to make up the work? Because what if they don't make up the work?
Yes, yes. I mean, that's what the idea is, that we're supporting the student individually, putting individual supports in place. I know now, for example, Liz speaks to, will call students in the morning and encourage them to come to school. So we would individually determine, and that's where that's what it talks about in the plan, that each student will determine together individually what they need. And part of that is there's a root cause analysis. So it brings it down to what is the cause of these absences and what is the best way to support this student? And the last thing we want them to do is feel like, oh, what's the point now? Why should I come? So that's why we want to get in early and help them before that happens. But if they get there, we put supports in place to encourage them to keep going. And that's one of the things. When you change their grade and give them an F, that feels so. But if you give them an opportunity to come in and to make up the work and to work towards the credit recovery, to work towards the credit, that feels a little more doable.
Maybe I didn't ask the question correctly.
Oh.
You answered part of it, but what if the student isn't doing any of these things to recover that credit? Is it, we're just leaving it on them, they have to come and tell us they want to make up that, or are we just allowing them just to not having that credit made up? I just don't want to see a student, have four absences in a row and then start coming to school and now they've got to.
Yeah, we always, no, we would never just say, oh, I guess if I'm understanding you correctly, the supports will constantly be put in place. And
Okay.
that we'll continue to contact the
Yeah, I
family.
know that's what it was, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, we'll continue to
understood
contact
that.
the family. We'll
Yes.
continue to work with the student to figure out, that's what we're doing. That's what they do now. But this just puts it more consistent across the board and says these are, a lot of the administrators felt like they were working on an island, trying to come up with ways. So these are ways now that we're going to continue to support. But no, if the student just says, doesn't want to make it up, we wouldn't just say, okay, they're not going to make it up.
Because they could continue to come to school, but just not make up that
Yes, we
credit.
would encourage them.
And then year after year, they're still missing that credit.
Yep, no, we encourage them and work with them to try to, as much as we can, to make them be successful.
I just want to jump in as a member of the guidance department. I promise you, we will be on them to make up anything they're missing. And again, just to kind of go off that, so at least at the high school, I know, Liz Pacheco can obviously speak to this more, so we'll be getting some information from Liz, but every Thursday at our student support team meetings, we have a wonderful spreadsheet that was put together by Liz Pacheco and review our students and current attendance numbers, and we're targeting students, at the tier 1, 2, and 3 levels, and counselors and assistant principals, we're having attendance meetings, we're putting together attendance plans. So I just want to make sure that, it's out there, these students are being supported and there's constant outreach and contact happening.
Thank you.
And I don't want you to think that I don't think the responsibility and ownership should be on the student, too. I mean, I don't want you to think I'm not holding them accountable, because I think we're all accountable for it.
Absolutely. Can I just address when you just mentioned that, I was thinking about this too, Narissa. I just want to address the perfect attendance too. I don't know if this will help, but when we discussed sending out perfect attendance letters, that was, first, we feel it's important if a student does have perfect attendance to recognize that. But I know we tried to avoid the perfect attendance assemblies or where we're announcing all those students. So that was a discussion that we had, that we wanted to recognize those students, because I do think it's important. I mean, if that's a big accomplishment if a student is able to come in. But I do realize also that some students aren't able to make perfect attendance. So we're not announcing it in school, but we are recognizing them through a letter to their parents, and that was a discussion that we had.
Yeah, I think it's important, when the team was together and the committee was working through this, I don't think it was ever the goal wasn't perfect attendance.
Right,
it was
right.
improved attendance.
Improved.
But to Narissa's point, I can see how,
For sure.
when you're reading through that could be seen as, that's the ultimate goal, is perfect attendance.
Yeah.
Could I make the suggestion then that maybe
Yeah.
it should be an improved attendance letter and not a perfect attendance letter? I just feel like those kids who may miss, a day with a sore throat, and they're just feeling crummy that day and they make a good decision to stay home, right, should not be penalized for that. And unfortunately, some people have better immune systems than others, and sometimes it's just the luck of who you are sharing your caddy
Right.
of Crayola markers with,
Yep.
right?
Sure.
So I just feel like for those kids who are really driven, it's not a good behavior that we're enforcing there.
Could I say, does it have to be either or? Can it be both, right? Can we recognize, and again, hearing you all talk about the assembly is where you're calling it out is very different than a quiet recognition with a family and, whatever construct that is. So I like that idea of celebrating perfect attendance, but why can't we also do improved attendance letters? So, right, if everyone's either improving attendance or close to perfect, and everyone's getting letters, great. So that would be my
Throughout the
question.
plan, it does have recognition of improved attendance, weekly recognition of improved attendance, and teachers recognizing it and contacting parents for sure.
Matt has a question.
I have a couple questions. First of all, are we really going to hold anyone back? Because it says likely grade retention.
Those are discussions that we've talked about. That's
I think it
why.
needs to be black and white, though.
So there are times when we wouldn't, because if it's, we have students who, like I said, it needs to be, you need to look at the student and what's happening and why they're missing school. And we have a lot of students who, because of school avoidance for mental health. And so we want to leave it to, because there are times when we've talked about it that we think maybe a student shouldn't move forward because they've missed so much that they've missed a lot of the grade. So we didn't feel comfortable as a team putting that they would stay back. So we wanted families just to be aware that there will be a discussion.
Well, if you're missing for mental health, shouldn't that be excused?
And there are times it is. I mean, it really is individualized. It's definitely,
And then on the illness and injury, doctor's note required after 3 absences, I could literally be absent every Friday and it still will be excused?
I believe that was in the,
And what if I go on vacation and I'm sick for 3 days, and then the other 2 days I just take as unexcused? Or do I have to get a note for all 5?
so where does it say that it's 3?
Am I in the wrong, in the attendance policy on page 3?
All right, let me see. Because I remember we talked about that
Oh, you're in the handbook.
In the handbook, sorry.
in the handbook.
And also, you should probably have a note if you're at the medical or dental appointment, that's pretty easy to get.
Oh, this isn't the, hold
And
on.
a lot of that language is current, right? So a lot of this isn't being changed. There's a lot of work being done to streamline and synthesize and have the same language in all schools. But this nuance and daily dance exists now.
Oh, I
I think you would be hard pressed.
that's the elementary.
A medical, like, if your kid goes to the doctor, the dentist appointment, I agree, those are very easy to get. I think you would find a lot of families would be
No.
hard pressed to get a medical.
You don't necessarily need to, though. You only need to get it when you go over 16. So if you have a chronic, you're sick for different reasons, then you start getting notes. If you're just sick a couple times, it's just it's
I know, but for mental health, I think that's why that one's going to be really hard to track, because I think every parent or caregiver that's dealing with a
just
student
pulling
trying
up
to do
the-
that, they wouldn't be able to get an excused absence until probably way after the fact. So that would be the one thing where I think it would be hard to make black and white, because those are hard appointments, hard people to get a hold of to assist you in those like times. So that's when it would really have to go up to the caregiver to say, like, yes, this is what was happening. But I agree on like the medical stuff, just on the mental health side, that's gonna be hard.
So what do
to
you do with people that are sick every Friday?
Handbook.
Well, that's a trending, so that would be more of a pattern of behavior. I mean, and that's different. That's something you can say, this is a pattern of behavior, and we're going to start needing documentation.
Devil's advocate, maybe they really had a tough week and by the time they hit Friday, they just can't get out of bed.
I'm just
Again,
speaking to the
there-
No, and I understand where
think
you're
that-
coming
I
from,
think
but on the
that's a
other side of
different-
it, Matt, they still could end up hitting the wall on Thursdays.
So there needs to be a waiver or something that the school is able to override that.
And I think that's what Shannon means with the case-by-case basis and being able to make a decision instead of a black and white, you fail.
I'm back on I'm on illness and injury, doctors.
Yeah, but I
required.
understand, it still ties into excused versus unexcused and when someone fails and doesn't fail and makes it to the next grade. So it's like a whole,
So the current language and the language we have in there, it says a doctor's note is required after 3 absences in 5 days. That's what you're referring to?
Yes.
So that's saying if you have 3 absences, we're asking for you to get a doctor's note for it to be excused. I'm not sure, what was your question about the,
You could be sick every week or every other week and still, and also, what if you go on vacation? Do you get the first 3 days as excused and then 2 days are unexcused? Or is it unexcused for the whole 5 if you say you're sick?
so it's unexcused until you get a doctor's note?
So if you go away for 3 days, it's excused if you claim that you're sick.
that it's only excused if you have a doctor's note.
I don't think it says that.
So they might need to clarify the language in the document.
That's what I'm saying.
There you go.
Okay.
So
That in the language now, and that is the language that we kept. So that is something to clarify, and I
So we
don't
can
know
look into
in
that for sure.
practice how we're
So we want to
implementing that.
identify better what's excused and what's unexcused, or what's excused and
Yeah,
what's
and
not excused.
there's so many cases that I think should also be
Yep.
waived that we don't need to get into on a piece of paper. So who makes the ultimate decision?
What's excused and what's not excused?
Yeah,
So we usually go by,
principal or,
I don't know that answer.
Right, It's
So
generally
for-
the principal.
But excused
in some
absences for
consultation.
medical appointments always need the doctor's note, from my understanding. So like, if you have an appointment, you need to bring something with you back to school or send it in to school to get it excused. If you're out sick and you want it excused, you have to have gone to the doctor and get the excusal note for how many days they expect you to be out.
Talking about like a different issue, like a mental health issue or something that the principal may know about or the school may know about that's not covered here. I think there needs to be a waiver or someone that ultimately makes the decision.
So we can go back, we'll definitely go back, since there's confusion, we'll go back and clarify the language and make it more clear in that area, for sure.
And I think this is language, we edited
It
this
is.
policy last year. And so I think we had this discussion. I don't remember why we landed on this
Well, there's no
specific language.
consequences.
Say one again?
There was no consequences last year.
As far as the follow-up of the plan. Yep. It was just how it got coded as excused or unexcused. But my understanding is practice is more along the lines of if you have an appointment, you need to have a note for it to be excused. And that's not specifically how this reads.
Right.
So I agree, a little more
Yep.
clarity.
For sure.
Thanks, everyone, for letting me jump in.
Thank you, thank you.
Sean's like, can I sit down, please?
Oh, that's why I couldn't find it, it was right here.
So you put language about modifying both the policy and the handbook language in the agenda.
Oh, sorry.
I guess my question is, what is the, because I heard you say we're not asking to modify the handbook language tonight, that would be with the approvals in August?
So the idea was to put this information in front of you, and I certainly think there's some follow-up information that's going to be important for you all before you approve a policy. So I think at this point, the policy, I think, is the simplest of the language, right? The plan and the handbook language is obviously more detailed. So my thought would be, rather than you taking any votes tonight, if we bring back answers to questions as well as anything we want to tweak within the handbook language and then the policy. And I guess the question would be, specifically in the policy, you normally refer it to subcommittee, first reading, second reading. Are you okay with whether you took this as a first reading tonight or just ignore a first reading and approve the policy, the handbook language, and the handbook language would be in the handbook on August when you meet, as well as there isn't an approval on the plan? So I guess that's a preference of the committee.
Personal preference, I don't mind going to a second and final reading, put it off, right? And then go to a second final reading, provided that all questions are addressed in a future meeting. So do nothing
Doing it all
tonight.
at once at the August meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be my preference. I don't
Yeah,
know where
I think
anybody
that's the
else is.
best way to go, so that we have all the answers. And that any corrections that have to be made would be made before we
Great.
vote on it.
This is the way. Thank you.
Does anybody have any other? Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for the work on this.
Thank you for your time, Mrs. Keeler. You can come back anytime, all of you. Every meeting would be nice. The next item is oral communications from the public. Members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee? Mr. Cullen.
Good evening. I'll try and keep this as within the parameters you just laid out. We've just come through a very intense political period. In Rowley, we had to figure out how to digest a $1 million increase in the Triton budget. We had to pass a $1 million override to handle the Triton budget and the 7x24 fire coverage. And then we've also just this week had to pass the 3A article after it had been voted down twice. So as you could probably imagine, the environment in Rowley is kind of very, very sensitive at this point. So at the same time, the taxpayers are facing the massive costs of both the Whittier and the refurbishment of the main Triton campus. If the upcoming contracts with Triton educators has the same structure as the last contract, then I predict the taxpayers of Rowley will reject any Triton budget that does not stay within the Proposition 2.5 guidelines, and any override will be doomed to failure. So everything is now super sensitive. So things need to change. We always start the Triton budget process too late, in January. We already know now the basic parameters of the FY27 budget, because the budget is driven by staffing and the contract. Now is the time to begin to address the FY27 budget, if for no other reason than we have to negotiate a new multi-year contract. We need to know what those parameters are when we go into those negotiations. The budget timeline has to change. To date, the towns, Rowley, Newbury, and Salisbury, seem to respond only to their share of the Triton budget, not the Triton budget as a whole, and not collectively. We do it one by one. This, again, has to change. This year is the final year of the teachers' contract. The last Triton Regional Teachers Agreement contract had built in year-over-year increases for the majority of educators, not of 3%, not of 5%, but in excess of 7.5%. You can go through the contract and you can see those numbers. Again, this has to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. The consent agenda. The consent agenda contains one donation tonight from David Hollowell for math supplies and texts for the high school. The consent agenda includes an overnight and out-of-state field trip request for planning approval for Pine Grove School's 6th grade to go to ecology camp October 20th through the 24th, 2025. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The student representative report. Student Representative Owen Silver is here tonight. He's going to give us an update.
Today marked the beginning of finals in the high school, which follows on the heels of the class of 2025's graduation, and as well as their senior week, which for those unfamiliar consists of yearbook signings, a Red Sox game, and elementary school walkthroughs, all of them all together for one last time. And while there's always those who are impatient to leave, a common refrain I heard from several students over that past week was how bittersweet it is to leave and how grateful they were for Triton.
Thank you, Owen. The next item is new business. Would any members like to raise additional items for inclusion on a future agenda? Nope. Discussion for prior new business. Last meeting, Paul Lees raised 2 items under new business, so we have those back in front of us tonight for a discussion on how the committee would like to proceed. The first one has a request that Principal Kelly produce a report on high school class sizes. I'll open this up to Mr. Lees to elaborate on if he chooses, and then I'd like to hear from other committee members on whether they would like to proceed with the request as it stands, or proceed with a similar but amended request, or to table the request. So I'll open it up to Paul Lees.
So it seems that we hear from time to time from certain members of the public about our budget and the fact that we aren't doing enough to keep a lid on the expenses. And one of the things I'm thinking is that at the high school level, we need to look at the FTEs in class sizes so that we can tell our townspeople that like to come into this room and tell us what we're doing wrong, that we have vetted these issues and that we've looked at them. And I think it would be very helpful for Principal Kelly to give us this information. We look at our class sizes in the grade schools all the time, and we wring our hands about whether it's a class of 18 or a class of 23 or 24. And I think we need to do the same thing at the high school level, just to get a better understanding, and so that we can tell these townspeople that like to come in and talk about 7% pay raises to the teachers and give them real information.
Thank you, Paul. Does anybody else want to?
I'd love to have a clarifying question on this. Are you looking for averages? Are you looking for by grade, by section, by class, by, I guess I'm trying to figure out, is the number that you're looking for, like the average is 17 students in any high school class, or are you literally looking for, sociology 1, whatever,
And so what Matt is saying
15 kids?
when he's nodding his head is that we want to know every class size.
Every class,
So not averages. Averages don't do anything for us. Excuse me?
Every teacher, every period, every class.
Number of kids in each class.
And that would include both gen ed and special ed classes, or? So literally everything?
Yep.
I'm going to clarify further. You want to account, how sad. You want to account for every butt-in seat for every class, like every student that's in the high school on like a Monday, and we're like, how many per class in that? So like every single student?
Yes.
Okay.
So if I can tell you what would be readily available is not a, I guess I don't want to say student-facing, but a algebra honors, how many in each section, right? So if there's 10 algebra honors sections, there are not. Then in section 1, there's 15. In section 2, there's 18. That is information that I can get readily available, yes. So that would account for every class and how many assigned to that class. What it wouldn't do is on any given rotation, how many times that class met on that Tuesday. But for a class in a section, for a teacher, a teacher teaches 5 sections, right? In a 6-section or a 6-period day. So they teach 5 sections. There's a drop in a prep. And so all of those sections, so Paulie's, his 5 sections, those would show up on the chart, not with names, but the course, the title, and the enrollment. Very doable, yeah.
Okay, I know when we've talked about this in the past, we've always wanted to stay away from an identification of the teachers.
So there'd
I'm
be
not looking
no
for that
teacher information on it. Yep.
Just looking for,
Courses, sections, yep. I would say, sorry to cut you off, someone asked, I don't remember who asked the question, special education. So those will not, those don't necessarily equate perfectly, depending on how the support is happening. If it was a standout, separate, that's what I'm looking for.
I understand, the IAs
Academic
are
support.
sharing, and
Yeah.
and there's multiple levels on
Yeah.
the special ed, I understand that.
But general sections, that is very easy to
we
put
would
on paper.
focus on the general education, I think that would be sufficient, because if there's a lot of ambiguity in the special ed, then there's really no need to go down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
That just,
But would that include AP classes?
Definitely include AP.
Yeah.
Yep.
what are you saying?
AP classes.
Yeah, well, that's a classroom.
Yep. So I'm hearing that is of interest to the committee, so. and-
I don't personally have a problem with it. We've done this before. I
So you
think,
personally don't have a problem with it?
I don't personally
Okay,
have a
so
problem
you
with it.
do. Okay.
I mean, so I fear that it could be used as a weapon to axe important AP classes that we know are of value to students that are going on to secondary education. So that would be my fear, is that it becomes, a weapon to say there are only, 9 kids in AP Gov last year, and we were saying at one point that it wouldn't run because there were only, 4 signed up next year, so it probably wouldn't run. I mean, 7 is it's a small class, right? But it's AP Gov, so if we can run it with 7 kids in it, I would argue that that's of educational value to run a small class size. I guess we can have that conversation if we need to, but I suspect that's what we're going to see. There are small classes, and where it's a small class, it's a situation like that, because that's what we saw when we looked at it back in, it was probably 2019, I'm going to say, the last time that we did a full review on
I
this.
say pre-COVID.
Yeah, but I don't like when this is when I was bringing up AP, was that's what's going to, if we cut AP classes because they're so small, that could force some of our students to leave Triton to go to another school, because that's not encouraging their breadth to grow. So I will fight AP classes because they need to be there for our students who want to have that extra growth in their repertoire of.
So I just want to be very clear that I'm looking for just the information and not necessarily the next step of making cuts, because all of us on this committee and the administration agree that the importance of AP classes is prevalent. And so that's not my concern. It's more of the general education courses.
Yes. I mean, I get what you're trying to do, but I fear exactly what Narissa said.
Well, to answer Narissa's point, I think every data point has to be placed in context. So just because a class size is small does not make it invaluable. So I think it needs, it is a data point. It is, useful. We can see it, great. But it's also something that needs to be placed into context about what our educational system looks like, what we're striving towards, what our students value in breadth of programming, and what we're able to offer. So even if a class size is small, I think, the argument that we make is that a small class is not invaluable. It just happens to be small and valuable. So, I mean, to Narissa's point, I do have that fear as well, but I'm going to hope that anyone that looks at those numbers and then tunes into a school committee meeting, or then looks at the high school and what we offer, will put that in context that yes, maybe 7 to 9 students are in AP government, but that is going to be a very valuable class. And they are going to take it where it needs to be taken. So removing it is not a great option for our programming. But again, that's not a discussion for tonight. But I will say, any data point that we bring up that is shared here, that is discussed, needs to be kept in context of our goals.
Owen?
I would absolutely echo that worry. I don't know necessarily that you can trust people to keep things in context. And full disclosure, I was in that AP Gov class of 7 people. And I just want to speak to the importance of having a diverse array of courses, not just for academic rigor for students, but when applying to colleges and they want to see those AP courses on your transcript. I think it's really important to keep those, and I would worry, I know you're just looking for information, but I would worry that having that out there would subject AP courses to extra attack, I suppose.
Thank you.
Thank you, Owen.
Well said. I think information is always good, right? It is good to have information in the light of day. It's going to require some work of you all then, if you have a public discussion, because the questions will come. And again, I mean, there's no shock and awe. It's the things we've been talking about. En masse, we're in the upper teens. If we're talking about the arts, or we're talking about French 4 versus French 1 and 2, or Spanish 4, right? The numbers dwindle as you go higher, or if it's an AP. Not every AP runs every year, right? It depends on in cycle who needs it. And so I don't think there's any shock and awe in the report to anyone around here, but if you have that public discussion, it will be incumbent on all of us to keep setting that context of why we're making those decisions. We talk about it all the time and have supported that, as has the committee. It would just have to be a more deliberate discussion. But that's certainly something we can bring at the August meeting, or if you tell me when it makes sense to have that discussion.
And we always want to be transparent. Any other discussion on that?
Can I just
I don't know if Mr. Lees would be willing to do this, but I kind of feel like after having gone through our belonging survey, all the results from the UMass survey last time, that this might fit in well, the conversation with sort of the discussion of our future goals, assuming that our goals are going to be continuing along the line of that survey. I think it might not be a bad fit to have that discussion as part of the workshop in September when we do the rest of our goals, just because I think it may be I am anticipating, just based on what we've always seen in the past, that it'll be a key component to part of those discussions about where students find value here and, where they feel like they are getting skills that are transferable into real life and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess I would say whether it's August or, was it 3 weeks later at the workshop?
Right.
I mean, the courses are set, well, not for Owen because he graduated, but, right, the courses are set for students coming back for next year, our current freshmen through juniors, and so that's done, right? The courses are going to be what they are going to be. Certainly there's some fluctuation, but I like that idea of targeting the Saturday workshop as part of that discussion. Makes sense to me.
Any other discussion? The second was a request to revisit the cell phone policy. Again, I will offer Paul the chance to speak first on this one in particular. I think it would be helpful if you could talk about the process you envision. The last reiteration of the cell phone policy was created through the school councils and then tweaked by the committee. But I am unsure from the suggestion if this would be similar or different. I would then again ask for input from the rest of the committee.
Can you repeat all that into the microphone? Slowly.
I would offer Paul the chance to speak first on this one in particular. I think it would be helpful if you could talk about the process you envision. The last reiteration of the cell phone policy was created through the school councils and then tweaked by the committee. But I am unsure from the suggestion if this would be similar of what you're looking for or something different.
I would like it to move with less committee oversight, less student oversight, and more along the lines of what Ipswich has done, where the teachers union came forward and said, please get the cell phones out of our classroom. And then the administration would accept that, the school committee would vote on it, and we would move in that direction. It's ironic that we have this discussion about cell phone right after we have a nice presentation about absenteeism. And I would suggest that they're not far from each other, because whether a child is not in class or whether he's in class and distracted by his device, there's no learning going on. That's the bottom line. When I talk to lay people and I describe how it's my mantra to get the cell phones out of the classroom, and I talk about the pros and the cons, and they say, well, it seems like a no-brainer. And that's where I stand on it. So I could go on for a long time talking about this, but it just seems to me that if our goal here is to create and build intelligent students who strive to always do better, that it's our job as a committee to get this policy in place, that cell phones are simply not brought into the classroom, because if you don't do that, it just leads to distraction. And if kids are distracted in the classroom, they're not learning. And as a school committee, we have an obligation. We may have high-performing students that are our own. On this committee, you may have your own kids that are very high-performing, and they do fine with or without the cell phone. But the important thing is not about our own children. It's about all the children in this district. And the last time I spoke about this, I talked about implementing it at the elementary schools, because there was a lot of pushback from Mr. Kelly about the high school. And I really think that even if it did just start at the elementary school and then it just aged up with the students, that's what needs to be done, so that we can get our students in a much better place, and so that our grading and our test scores will improve.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but
Can't hear you.
I said, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I don't think elementary schools have the phones, and the middle schools don't have, middle school aren't allowed to have the phone.
So the current policy is a bell-to-bell at the elementary. Basically, it's in the backpack. some kids carry it, some kids don't. At the middle school, same thing, allowed to be there. It's supposed to be in the backpack, in the locker, really. Lockers kind of happen. At the high school, it's not, it's away during class, available in between passing periods and lunchtime. So I know Newburyport just moved to only available during lunch, right? It's supposed to be away in passing time. So I guess the one thing I would just add is the high school council, I don't think there's the elementary or middle school principal see any need to change anything. It's not needed. The high school council, Patrick's been working with the program coordinators, department heads, as our term is PCs, and there is discussion about it, moving towards that direction, and the goal is to work with the school council this year, as well as this coming year, as well as the student council, and engage a similar process what Newburyport went through, engaging in parent forums, student forums, staff, and getting feedback, to have a discussion about the beliefs. I would say the beliefs are still, on any given day, I could be convinced a bell to bell is the right choice, or on another day, I could be convinced that similar to what we have is the right choice. But the plan is to have a process next year to go through that in discussion.
I think it's worth saying, like, I appreciate your points. I would respectfully disagree with much of it. I think cell phones can be a tool in the classroom. I have used them as a tool in the classroom. I think that teachers, given the right tools, can curb the use. I've seen it done. My staff has done a great job with it this year. They have not been the problem this year that they have been in the past. And the other thing I'd say, and this is well out of our control, I will support a cell phone ban the year that we don't see a school shooting and the Supreme Court gets rid of their idiotic interpretation of the Second Amendment. Because until then, I want every kid to have a phone with them, because it's just too frightening out there.
Does anybody else have anything?
I think it's more important to teach the children and others that there's accountability that goes along with rules, because we do have a rule in place that the teacher tells you if it's appropriate to take your phone out and when it's supposed to go away. And I think holding people accountable is more important than telling them that they cannot have use of a cell phone. I agree with Paul on the points that there are certain situations in classrooms where phones are very useful, and I don't want a black and white rule saying that teachers are not allowed to have discretion on whether or not they're allowing their students to use those tools in the classroom.
I struggle with this. I struggle because although they can be a distraction, they can also be a tool. So I would err more on the side of accountability and usefulness, and finding the way to have a cell phone be part of your day in a productive, respectful manner that does come with accountability and it comes with clearly defined rules. I don't think a full cell phone ban teaches our students how to use them in the real world and how to be accountable to them in the real world. And I also don't think we would have a lot, and I don't know this, I haven't run a forum, but I'm not sure there's a ton of support from families to remove phones from their students when they've chosen to give their student a phone. So I would like to see it more along the lines of, if a teacher would like to utilize it in their classroom and a student has been allowed to have one in their home life, then that is what works. And then come up with a plan that when it is a distraction, when there are problems, that we have a clearly defined path to hold a student accountable for not using their phone appropriately. But I don't think there's any clear way. Like, a full cell phone ban sounds great, but I don't know if that gets our students ready for the next phase of their life. And that's my biggest concern. I just don't, when you ban something and you remove it, they don't know how to use it. And that's kind of where I'm stuck.
I just have a question. How is it a tool?
A cell phone?
Yeah.
In what setting? Like in a classroom setting?
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally,
No, in a classroom setting.
if a student wants, what do you mean?
It's a music tuner, it's
Well,
a
hold on.
tempo keeper.
But I'm not, I'm
Okay,
going to ask,
you got me there, but I'm just like, if you're looking up to research stuff, we give them Chromebooks.
yes, they have Chromebooks, but a phone can also be a tool. I mean, I have an iPhone that does more than my Chromebook. So if I have access to that and I can utilize it, or I have access to more documents that are not from the school, but from my own personal stuff, and they're sitting on my iCloud, I mean, in my real life, I utilize both a work computer, the school computer, and my phone to get through my day. It's a tool, not a distraction. I have focus on my phone because I can't be trusted. So, I mean, again, as a tool, I have found a way to keep my phone focused on what I'm doing, and that's something valuable that we could be teaching students. Can I give you an exact example right now, Matt? No, I wish I could, and if in a couple hours I'll think of one.
Are you talking within the classroom?
Yeah, like in the classroom, but I just don't think it's not a tool.
Good. How much time do you have? There are programs like, there's one called Kahoot, where it's a very easy way for students to do a quick check-in. Teacher can put 5 questions up on the board, everybody answers on their cell phone, you see what percentage of the class gets it. It's a great way to start a class, look at it, say, okay, 75% of the kids don't know what rights are in the First Amendment, I've got to recover that. So that's one that I see used often. Having taught video and production classes, and we've got VTV here, uses them constantly, I've used it as well. And I think one of the things we're going to see is, as assessments, with AI coming more and more into the foray, we're going to have different means of assessments. And I think video, podcasting, those types of things are going to be at the forefront of that. I think that's going to be a way around it. Those are just 2 off the top of my head, but there are numbers of ways that they get used in the
So
classroom.
you can't do that with a Chromebook?
No, not the same way.
Okay.
Just follow up. Your phone has raw sensors for acceleration, with or without accommodating for local gravity, a gyroscope, light sensors, which also get a GPS position, magnetometers, and pressure readers.
Okay.
And then what's frustrating, right, is that the technology on the phones often surpasses the technology, like to the point of what's on the computers, especially for the videography. So when I have students record an event in their life, they can do physics off the video off their phone, but they can't off of a laptop or an iPad. So to the point, though, they're tools, and they can be tools, and is the tool appropriate for use in the classroom, and what are the parameters and the benefits and the trade-offs? But I think what you described, Mr. Forget, of having the community engagement, it's a big decision in terms of families spend $1,000 on a piece of technology and give it to their kids and expect them to have access to it. And while sometimes I think that there's questions at the margins for families, that I don't know that cell phone accessibility during school is one of those marginal decisions. I think that people have very strong opinions about it either way, and so making sure that you are, even if you sort of have an idea of what you'd like to do as an administrator of a building, as a school committee, making sure that everyone is heard, and then putting in that policy that addresses it in a way so that people feel heard is super important. In terms of the fact that it is, here, I've given my 14-year-old a $1,000 piece of technology because in case of an emergency, I want to get in touch with them, or this is a $1,000 piece of technology that's got medical sensors on it that my child is relying upon, and how does that get accommodated for? So, but also, God, they're a pain in the neck to manage in school.
Go ahead, Owen.
I, of course, have plenty of examples as well, especially with those sensors in physics class. But if I remember correctly, one of the big focuses on that conversation in school council a few years ago wasn't about whether or not it should happen, but if it did happen, it was on enforcement, because the department heads wanted to use, said that their teachers want to be able to use phones in classrooms in certain situations, and they want to have that freedom, and they don't want enforcement of any phone policy to fall on a teacher themselves.
And I think it's important for us to have the principal of the school getting the pulse of the staff and students to see if there is a problem with it. And then coming to us to say, this is what the policy we need, because this is what I see a problem in the school. I think we have to look at Patrick as the person who has to make the decision if there's a problem in the school, not us as school committee members, because we're not in the school. And I have a question for you. Do you feel that there's a problem when you have been in class, that there's been problems with the cell phone?
I absolutely do not, but I'm personally not the best example because of the courses I've taken. I don't think that's AP and honors courses are where you typically notice it. And I'd also, as far as I've observed, it's more, if that person isn't distracted on their phone, they're going to be distracted on something else. It's more of an individual problem than it is a problem with the phones themselves, right? If you take that away, that person's going to be playing games on their Chromebook or doing something else to disrupt class. I don't know that phones is the root cause in most situations.
Thank you.
I would like to point out on the counterpoint of this, is our school setting ready for a whole bunch of students that cannot communicate? I would run into this. If your student does not have a phone and comes to the high school, middle school, are they going to be able to communicate a change of dismissal or a change of anything with ease? And I can tell you, I don't know if that's a huge setup to undertake. At the elementary level, it's a lot easier. They're not moving classes. The classroom teacher can identify a student that doesn't have a device and be like, yep, use my phone, go ahead, use my classroom phone, make that phone call. But in a setting where they're changing classes all the time, any student that has any disruption to their day that then needs to communicate it, do I agree they should be doing it during class? They don't have their phones with them, but they do have them in between classes, no?
Not for the middle school. The middle school, it goes in the locker at the beginning of the day, and it comes out of the locker at the end of the day.
But at the end of the day, they can communicate after the bell.
And honestly, that is what forced my family to give our children cell phones, is because of after-school activities that were either getting canceled last minute or ending early. And there is no...
There's no way to there's no setup for that.
There's no payphone here anymore.
No, the payphone... I actually asked. We should probably put one back.
There's no payphone, right? And yeah, and there's an assumption that every kid has a phone. So when your child is here as a 7th grader and starts their activities in September, and all of a sudden the bus has gone and they realize that they don't have an after-school activity and they don't know what to do, that was the point when we got a phone for them, because they need it at that point.
My point is...
That's not during the school day,
No,
but I'm just saying, that's
the counterpoint is, are we set up for a building full of students and medical needs, all of that? There's processes that need to be rethought if is a full ban on cell phones. But I would say that, does the good outweigh the bad? If we teach our students how to use a cell phone correctly as a tool during the day with parameters and then enforce it, I think you'll get a better outcome than a full-on ban.
So, Madam Chair, we have a full agenda tonight, and I think we've heard from many of the school committee members. And of course, Owen's input was very important. So what I'm hearing is that the status quo is fine. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, I think that Patrick is reviewing the cell phone policy, correct?
That will be the process next year. Yep. So that has been discussed, as Owen mentioned, but that will be the plan to have that more formally engaging. It's been a discussion with the school council, and that will be more formally district and community-wide with families in next year.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the DCC meeting update. At the meeting on May 22nd, Raleigh Select Board member Christine Nealon was selected by the 3-member town select board chairs to serve as the municipal representative on the district negotiating team for 2025 through 2028. This is a continuation of her service from 2022 to 2025, and we are greatly appreciative of her dedication to the negotiations team. The DCC also discussed the current year budget, next year's budget, and the progress with the MSBA on a capital project at the Byfield campus. Subcommittee reorganizations. Thank you to everyone for sending in their subcommittee assignment requests. There was a member who had asked to switch subcommittees. While I tried to work these out so that everyone is where they wish to be, sometimes it gets difficult in a situation like this. My proposal, I've already spoken to that person who has wanted to possibly go to a different subcommittee. So my proposal is to leave the subcommittees as they are for the coming year with a strong preference to making changes. We don't need a vote, but does anyone have any concerns with this recommendation that everybody's going to stay where they belong, where they are currently?
Where they belong. Wow.
As long as Brian, I don't stay a nobody.
Oh, I was tired. I was trying to say she wasn't a chair or a vice chair. I said she's a nobody. God, that was bad.
We can fix you not being the chair very easily. We'll take care of it.
And I hope you put that on his evaluation. So is there any concerns or anything? Okay. Summer professional development update. Dr. Annie Bates is going to provide an update on PD.
So this summer, we have a number of offerings that that for our teachers, our related service providers, our instructional assistants to participate in. They are on this document listed by date, I believe. We're doing some work with sort of some continued work with implementation of CKLA. There's been a real focus on writing and improving writing instruction over the last year, and we're continuing that work with grade level representatives, working with our consultant actually a week from today, which is crazy to think that's going to be summer PD, but that's happening. We have opportunities for middle and high school mathematics teachers who are going to be implementing big ideas to do some unit unpacking for their first unit and lesson planning. We have a two-day co-teaching PD, which is coming at the end of our 3-year grant cycle for the for evidence-based programming grant. So we have the same consulting company coming back running that training. We're also going to do a 1-day training for any new hires who may have missed that June training. We had to cancel a couple of these due to low enrollment, building digital resources to encourage student engagement. Our Portrait of a Learner program development was canceled, but has been reshaped, and I actually like the new plan even more moving forward, so it's just not happening on those dates now. We also had to cancel strengthening elementary science instruction due to low enrollment, as well as Kayla's been putting Navigating Frontline on the summer PD schedule every year, and nobody has signed up for it yet, so we're canceling that one more time. I'll be doing a training for a new cohort of mentors. We have a lot of staff who have reached out and expressed an interest in mentoring who haven't done that before. And then we have one planning day for effective co-teaching. So those educators who participate in the 2-day sort of initial training will have an opportunity to come and actually do that planning to get ready for the first weeks and first sort of month of school in a co-taught classroom. And then I also have some training for teachers who are going to be implementing investigating history in grade 5 or piloting it in grade 4, 6, or 7 as well. And then Regina Simons is running a book group on proficiency-based instruction for the world language teachers as well. So lots of good things, a lot of them facilitated by our own staff, and I'm sort of happy that we're kicking off summer PD next week. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Summer programming update. Shannon Nolan is going to provide an update on summer programming.
So for special education, we offer so we have ESY for our students who are on IEPs, and there's a district-wide ESY at the preschool level, which is held at NES. There is an elementary ESY district-wide, and then we have our TLC and our ALPS program, which is two of our in-district programs, which offer a summer program at NES. And these programs the district-wide ESY programs run 8:30 to 11, and the TLC and ALPS program run 8:30 to 12:30, and students have the ESY identified on their IEP, and it is to prevent regression. It's not to make progress, it's for preventing regression. And those programs run for 5 weeks. So we have middle and high school ESY program, which runs 8 to 12. That program also runs 5 weeks. That would include our TLC program at the middle and high school, and NES in our essentials program if students in those programs are identified to need ESY. And then we have our 18 to 22 program, which is running 6 weeks. Those students, a lot of our students in the 18 to 22 program have internships, so we run that a little longer for them to be able to access their jobs. They're doing internships or they have jobs. Rebecca Takesian's done an amazing job of working with our students in those programs and getting them jobs, which is really exciting. So that program runs for 6 weeks. And then we offer tutoring at the elementary, middle, and high school level, and the tutoring is offered it's in math or reading, and it's during the summer school hours. And that's also determined by the team, and it's on a student's grid, whether they need 2 hours of tutoring or 1 hour of tutoring. That all depends on their level of regression. And that runs 5 weeks also.
Does anybody have any questions for Shannon? The next item is the school committee member handbook. This is the handbook that we put out a few years ago that shows the protocols and what you do in certain cases of being a school committee member. I just want to make sure that if anybody has any changes or, yes.
On page 4, new member technical logistics. Network login to access personal email address, both personal and shared drives. That would be school issued, not personal, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And then on page 6, we talk about the school committee currently has 4 subcommittees, and we list 5 because one of them's listed twice.
We will fix that.
That's it.
I think facilities should actually come off the list. So it's 4 standing subcommittees, and then facilities is like an ad hoc committee that we can essentially take apart anytime, if I remember correctly.
So it's 3 standing plus facilities as a 4th. It's just listed, facilities is just listed twice.
It should be 3,
Yeah,
yes, yes, you're right.
Yes. Does anybody else have any? The next item is school committee goals, end-of-year review. The school committee set 2 multi-part goals this year, which are in the document attached. The first one was about belonging. The second one was about a building project on this campus. I would appreciate input on how members believe we performed against our goals and whether any unmet goals should be addressed in the fall goal setting.
I guess I'll venture out there first. So I think on the belonging one, we satisfied the top 2 actions. We just haven't gotten to the sort of the strategies piece of it yet. And part of that's just because we had a 2-month bump out, I believe, of the results to make sure that we could get the professor from UMass here to be able to do that. My preference and my assumption, honestly, given that we've had part of this as our goal for the past 2 years now, is that that final item will be moved into the goals for next year and probably expanded on to make sure that we continue to address this, because this is, I think this has been a focus of the committee, and it's very important to get into not only the belonging piece of it, but everything that's included in the UMass survey. And then on the second one, I think we exceeded that because we finished this one back up in December. I'm not sure if next year we have a goal around the building project, just because it's functioning on its own right now, sort of on it, there's a set timeline for it. I think it's going to continue to be a big piece of the committee's work moving forward for the next, 5, 6, 7 years. But I think we well beyond met the goal that we set back in September.
Does anybody else have anything? I agree with Narissa that we've done very well on both of these goals, making sure, as well as the administration has done the vocal data and has given us more than enough to think about for those surveys. So I think with what Mr. Piaz had talked about, that's probably going to be part of our goal. And it will probably be a long-term goal, seeing what comes out of what changes we can make from the data. And our facility subcommittee is well underway. And I think the committee has done a great job in picking the right people to be on those committees, on that committee to do the work. Anybody else have anything on the goals? Nope. Evaluation of the superintendent. Thank you to everyone for submitting the evaluation survey. Narissa and I compiled all the responses into the attached document. The committee could choose to change any of the recommended ratings, and we also need to determine a rating for Goal 1 based on the iReady data the superintendent shared last week and the overall rating based on all of the information. Let's start with Goal 1, and I will open that up for discussion. Let me just... Sorry, I can't read this.
Can't do multiple things at a time.
No.
So, I guess I can start with this. So, Brian's goals were 75% for iReady, and both of them were right around, they had started like 67-ish% and had gone to around a little 70-71%. Personally, being a numbers person, I would consider that some progress. It's definitely moving the needle, but not close to the threshold that Brian set if you look, at where it started and sort of where it finished.
I would agree, only because the way that it's written, there's really no other way to look at it. Not necessarily a bad thing, but just the way in which it is written, there's no other way to kind of categorize it or look at it from a different viewpoint beyond just what the iReady scores are.
Is there any other discussion on goal 1?
Is everyone good with it being some progress? Anybody have a, yes, I see lots of nods. Okay. So I'll set that as some progress. His second goal was Parent Square and YouTube videos and a strategy for the middle school, high school building project communication. These were rated through the survey, and the rating averaged out to a significant progress. I don't know if anybody, ratings are subjective, right? When we're doing them in the surveys, does anybody have concerns about a rating of significant progress on goal 2? Not seeing any concerns. Okay. Goal 3 was Portrait of a Learner and Plan B for the middle school, high school, and the review of visual and performing arts. He was, again, the survey overall came out to significant progress amongst the 9 responses that we received. Does anyone have concerns about that? Okay. And then instructional leadership, standard 1, the average across the 9 was a proficient rating. Standard 2, management operations, was an exemplary rating. Standard 3, family and community engagement, was an exemplary rating. And standard 4, professional culture, was an exemplary rating. Any concerns with those 4? Okay, because we can change any of these at this point if we want to. And then the last thing we need to do is determine an overall rating based on those items. And we said that we would do that in discussion, in part because it helps when it's in discussion, and I think also because we didn't have goal 1 responses at the time, so couldn't even come close to knowing what that would reflect. And the choices are unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, or exemplary for his overall rating.
I'll start.
Wow.
I was going to say, I'll kick it off.
I'll start. Thank you. I think the superintendent has, in my book, is always exemplary because of the respect that he has from the 3 communities, from the community. I think he does, just at the town meetings when they were asking questions, Brian was right there to give answers, give a whole history. He could be up there all night if he really wanted to be. And he answered the questions with professionalism and always spot on. No matter what question was asked, he was right there to give all the answers to it. He always has the district as well as the 3 communities' budgets in mind at all times. This year was a tough budget, and I think in all of our subcommittees, he always is right there with us, shoulder to shoulder, to deal with anything that we're working on with negotiations, with policy, with finances. He exemplifies all of us being up on our game whenever we are in these subcommittees. That's why the 3 subcommittees plus, 4 subcommittees, why the work is done so well, because we distribute the work that needs to be done for the committee through those 4 committees, and Brian is in every single one of them, making sure that we stay on task and that we're following regulations, and I don't think we could have a better superintendent than we have. I mean, there are some areas that he can do better in. One of them is when he hires someone. At least for the first year, I think he needs to be checking in more frequently. But other than that, I think no matter what a parent, a community member, a school committee member, another superintendent from another district, whenever they call Brian, he's always gives time to make sure that he's answering any question that they need. So for myself, I believe he's exemplary, and I think we're very fortunate to have him as our superintendent. Go again.
Or I guess it's me next. We'll just go down the line. You're next, Matt, so start thinking. Oh, boy. I would consider a proficient rating for the overall evaluation rating. I would echo a lot of what Linda said, so I don't want to repeat all of that. I think, superintendency is a very difficult balancing act to do on the day-to-day. There are not enough hours, which is why when Linda's saying things like, more frequent check-ins, I can agree with that, but I also can say, where is the time in the day? I 100% agree, right? There needs to be, finances this year were tough, getting some realities about fiscal year 25 budget, right? Thanks in part to Dave and Rich and everyone else, right? It's looking like it's all going to come out in the wash, but that was not a good February and March to go through. I think that that Brian does a good job of being the face and the voice of the district to a lot of people. And I can say earlier this year when we renewed your contract, there was a parent that said to me, so what'd you do at the meeting last night? And I was like, we renewed Brian's contract for additional years. And she said, oh, thank God. So I think that a parent that I don't even think you have a lot of contact with, just having that, there's a sense of trust, right, that's been built there with the broader community, which is a gift, because I think a lot of superintendents can't do that. And just being that face of the district is a huge advantage. And then, I think you are a very administrative administrator. I would love to see you out in the classroom more, because I have seen how alive you can be out there and how much it reminds you of what we do, why we do it, and why we do it. And I think that, I think a little more of that in your life could go a long way, but I also understand the burdens of the job. So I think we appreciate everything you do. As I think you always overemphasize your room where you can grow, right? And underestimate the strengths that you have. So, I think we can all say, right, there's always some room for growth, but overall, very strong as a superintendent, and having dealt with a lot of other districts, very glad to have you here. Yeah, you're next.
No, I watch a lot of meetings in other towns, and I tend to agree more with Linda. And the only thing, you could keep things a little more brief, so I'll hand it over to Paul.
Wow, that was
I
really...
appreciate you leading by example, Matt.
So I would rate Brian as proficient. The concerns I have are just about the turnover, and I know that since COVID happened, the job, the people pool out there is not what it should be. And I know you've had a real struggle with trying to keep and retain people, and that's not your issue, but it makes your job hard, because it seems like you're constantly on a search for somebody important in the district. So the one thing I do want to talk about for just a moment is I'm always very proud at the Raleigh Town Meeting, and I know Linda just said this, but just how you perform and how you answer questions, and that you're the face of the district, and the stand-up job that you do, trying to keep the focus of the electorate, if you will, on the right issues, and I think that's really important. And then just the last thing I would want to talk about is just that in this charged climate of teachers going out on strikes all the time, that your relationship with the teachers and the administration has kept everything on track so that we have very fruitful and respectful negotiations with the committees, with the teachers' union and the IAs, and I attribute that to you. Thank you.
We had the challenging budget year, and we kept having the conversations of if we have a budget in May, and it didn't end up particularly being close, with all three towns passing, two overrides passed, and one of which wasn't specified as being for the schools, and the other town not needing to go to an override and passing in town meeting. And so I think a lot of that is the communication with the town leaders and the job that you do communicating our needs, our struggles, and our strengths makes it easier for us to go to the towns, even in a challenging year, and say, we need this money. And them being willing to maybe begrudgingly, but accept that reality is on you. I think that sometimes you could be a little bit, more aggressive or perhaps meaner to the people who need accountability, but the people that you have in place doing the jobs are, for the most part, doing the jobs that they're supposed to be doing, and that's your direct responsibility as well. So I think in the areas where we most need you to be doing your job, you are doing it very well.
I would think an overall rating of proficient, but I would echo so much of what was already said. Your job is incredibly difficult, and we are regional, so you're dealing with 3 different towns that have 3 different need sets, and that's just the start of your budget concerns. And then you have your leadership team all the way down to students. It is so much to take on, and your communication style leads to trust. People trust what you say. You have an incredible amount of knowledge on almost every aspect of everything we need, and the few pieces of knowledge you may not have readily available, you know exactly where to find it, who to call, contact, email, and can have it within probably 2 minutes to 1 business day. So that is a skill set that not everyone owns, and it's so valuable to have someone in your position that can sit on every single subcommittee and almost every single meeting and have something to offer that helps focus, refine, and remind everyone why they're there and the goal that they have. I wouldn't say meaner, or aggressive. I would echo Narissa. I can't say meaner or aggressive because I think that goes against what makes you powerful in your position, what makes you do well. But I will say, when someone is hired, you do fully trust them to do the job because you've heavily vetted and done a great job of choosing them, but also maybe a little bit less trust in that first year across the board would kind of alleviate some of those headaches because they might be the right person for the job, but need a little bit more support that wasn't readily clear. So that would be my only thing.
All right. I don't know if we'll be quite as verbose as everybody, this being my first year, but I think definitely I would feel that I lean towards exemplary. This has been, an incredible year for me, and I feel like as the superintendent, I have learned so much from you and from, others on the committee, kind of sitting on this side also and going through these reviews every year also, just professionally. I think many of you have pointed out, little pieces here and there, but again, overall, you are helping to run this entire district, and the way that you work with all of our subcommittees and all of that, yes, I think we can each find a little something here and there that, yes, you need to tweak. And when you talk about turnover in education, I look at the district that I'm working in now, I feel like, yes, some of it does fall on you, but also it is challenging everywhere. And I just think considering, what's going on, that I just feel like, yes, there are, these little pieces, but that definitely overall that you're up there.
Based on the way that we calculated out in each individual section and taking a look back at it, I would say exemplary because you've hit many more categories in exemplary than you have. We only have you in one proficient category. The rest are all exemplary. So I don't see why we wouldn't give you an overall exemplary. We talked a little bit earlier about some of the things that maybe perhaps as a group we can focus on with you leading us in that. Communications of positive things that happen in school. We often hear a lot of negative things out there and people hang on those, but if we start being a little bit more proactive about sharing some of those things that are happening in each of the individual schools that are great things that people and the public should be hearing about, it would help bring in the community piece of it as well as an understanding of some of the things that we are doing in the school systems that are helping the students and helping the community itself. Going back to the theme of accountability, making sure that when we do have something in place that there is an accountability that goes along with that. Being comfortable with sharing, having the staff share wins and challenges, successes, things that they hope that could change, things they just wanted to get off their chest and be heard, even if they know that there's no way to change it, but just making sure that there is an environment in a way to allow that to happen is some of the things that I'm hopeful for that we can then implement in some of the work we're doing in the future.
I'm supposed to come up with something new now? I would say I have never seen you angry. Even when you should be, even when I wish you were, maybe. But I appreciate the tone that sets for the district because I understand the power that someone in your position has to set the tone for everyone on down the line. And in a time when teachers are belittled and attacked and denigrated too often, that's important. And that's something that I think is necessary.
And I think you work very well with each and every one of us. It takes a village.
So 6 of us get passing grades. 3 Pauls did not give me an indication on what the rating was. So I'm going to look back at you, Pauls, and say, what's the rating that should go? Did you?
Yeah, he said proficient.
You said proficient? Okay, sorry. Maybe I missed it. You said? Proficient. And, tiebreaker.
Tiebreaker. Oh, does it come down to that?
Yeah.
It's proficient. Erin made a good point that if we have X number of things in the exemplary category, then that makes sense.
Yep.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve the final summative evaluation of the superintendent as stated by the school committee through its discussion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? So you're going to tell Brian what his rating was? And I just wanted to make sure that you said it for the people.
Oh, Brian's overall rating is exemplary for this year.
So definitely favorite time of year. But I would just say thank you. I appreciate the support. I would have rated myself as proficient if I was doing a self-evaluation. I certainly think I appreciate in the kind of the raw data, the comments, and I know they're summarized here. And I think that's helpful to hear specifically what you feel is going well and then explicitly where you feel like I can improve. It's helpful to me that there's no surprises here, right? I mean, that's where I feel like the system works because anything that's been shared here largely has been shared in some form from you all directly. And so I would just encourage you to keep doing that. And we will never have a perfect year, but it is certainly a challenging job, and I cannot do it with the people I'm surrounded by, literally and figuratively right now. But I appreciate the support, and I'm very glad to be here. So thank you.
The next item is CREST and NEC budgets. I'll turn this over to the superintendent, who is the district representative of the CREST and NEC boards.
So this is just an FYI. There's no action that you need to take. DESE is taking a much more, I would say, aggressive stance on reviewing collaboratives. We are members of both North Shore Consortium in Beverly, CREST Collaborative in Andover. And so I'm working with them because apparently there's a very specific quarterly reporting that I'm supposed to be giving to you as committee members. Again, not actions you're taking, but information, whether it be the audit, the budget, or obviously but two other times throughout the year. So working with both collaboratives to make sure that I'm fulfilling that so that they can pass their review when they get audited by DESE. So you have both the North Shore Consortium budget, which is a little more put together budget package with a letter from the treasurer of the North Shore Consortium, which will be a familiar name to you because we share Kevin Mahoney as our treasurer. And then the CREST budget, a little bit more kind of numbers rather than narrative and story, but you have that there for your information. Again, certainly happy to answer questions at any point in time after the fact. If there's something that catches your eye or something that you want to talk tonight, be happy to chat about it.
Any questions? The next item is the middle school, high school building project update. Matt Landers, the chair of the school building committee, which I want to thank you, Matt, for being the chair, will provide an update on the work being done in regard to the building project.
So we haven't met as a school building committee since the last meeting, but we have been meeting as a visioning working group, and we went on more school tours on Monday. I don't know, and we also did some workshops. Did we do, I don't know if we did the school tours before or after the last meeting, but we've gone 2 days of school tours and some working focus groups. And on Friday, we have the design enrollment meeting.
Yeah, so that meeting on Friday is right, this number that is ultimately decided by the MSBA. We can push and try and move that number up. It becomes the basis of the entire design for the project. So it's the student enrollment. Obviously, we know we're trending down. So their numbers that they have as a baseline are lower than today. Our job is to then work with them to talk about how we believe ultimately same thing has happened at Pentucket, where there are families were sending students off to private school or other schools. When the new building comes online, inevitably those students return. We can expect to see less choice and less private schools in general. And so that is a key meeting. Rarely is it a convinced and done in one meeting, so my guess is there will be a follow-up meeting. But the building committee will be meeting on July 9th. And to be able to give the formal building committee an update on hopefully that number, finalize a projected budget for our feasibility study, which I can tell you the recommendation is going to be $1.7 million, at least from us to the building committee. And then we would be likely scheduling either late July or early August a meeting for you all to take a formal vote, and this will be dependent on the MSBA, to approve a feasibility agreement. So that is the document that I sign as the CEO, but that's authorizing basically that 2-year phased feasibility and schematic design study phase along with the budget. So the budget would include our reimbursement, which we know to be 47.5%, with our proposed budget of $1.7 million. So those two would be individual votes that I think is a pretty quick meeting, but we'll likely need to get that on the books. I'd like to get it on the books prior to August 28th, 8th, 6th, whenever that meeting is. And just to confirm, I believe I said this last month, but since we last met, I believe, the MSBA has confirmed that they are on board with moving us quicker than they assume. So normal, the assumption is we were welcomed in December. We have until the end of October to complete Module 1. We then come to the December meeting to be welcomed into Phase 2, to Module 2. They've agreed that we want to get all of our ducks in a row in submissions by August, and they will get us onto that October 29th agenda, 28th, 29th agenda, which is where we'd be welcomed into Module 2, off to the races, selecting an onus project manager, design team, probably late next winter, and we are off to the races on our study. So it's about to get exciting and really busy.
I want to thank Brian, Narissa, and Matt for the work that they're going to be doing and the work they've already done so far for the building project.
Can I just say one more thing about the Vision Working Group? We, as you remember, you all authorized money to be spent ahead of the project, and it's amazing how many times throughout these visits and meetings, so it's Mike Perillo and Paul White from MLP Design, have spoken about the fact that we are doing this way early. When we're doing these visits and tours, people are talking about, what has the designer said? And that the beauty is, nothing against designers, but we're not having discussions about the building, the structure, all of that. We're talking about what we want for a learning space. Back to a comment I believe you made about a year ago. You can have a gorgeous building that makes absolutely no sense for an instructional institution. So I'm thrilled. I was excited about that before. Now, as we've gone through the process, it's really nice to not be stuck talking about the specifics of a building and just to be talking about the vision of what we want for our students as far as an educational learning space.
I think it went a lot to say, too, that a lot of these buildings that we're walking into were not designed with visioning, and they have these unused spaces, and I actually heard one of the superintendents talking to the visioning company that we're working with, asking them if they would be available to set up a conference call. Because, yes. So.
It's amazing what you learn when you just linger and find yourself. I would just be sitting with kids and like, so what works? And amazing, or teachers, and some of them speak very, very freely. So we've learned a lot.
The next item is the superintendent's report. Brian?
So this will be very quick. I want to start by introducing, sorry it took to this late in the meeting, my gosh, it's already 9. Deborah Murphy, my new assistant, who will be, has replaced, not will be, Nicole Stouty. Nicole's last day was yesterday. They've overlapped several days, and Nicole imparted a lot of information. I believe you have 3 legal pads full of notes she's taken. So she will be attending meetings, doing minutes. And so certainly she will be the person you're reaching out to if you have a question, or you'll be hearing from, whether it's the conference in November or other things that you do as the committee. So my report proper just has 2 things. One, honors the retirees, similar to the main agenda where they're listed. And also every year I have included the list of all of the colleges where students are accepted. And I feel like a broken record, but I'm gonna keep saying it because there are so many decisions that go into a family's decision about where a child will or will not attend college. And so it's not about where students go. The real kind of victory is where students are being accepted. And so there are the list of 147 institutions this year, right? Some really impressive universities, right? So I think we spend a lot of time talking about, as every district does, the quality of education, and we hear students, we hear teachers, we hear families talk about if what you want is a high-quality education to be prepared for whatever future you want, you're going to find it at Triton, and this list proves it. So Owen's among the items here on the list, or among the colleges, and so certainly he is one of 143, right, Owen, was the graduating class. And so congratulations to them on a long and storied career and incredible successes. We had a great opportunity at graduation to just celebrate a really impressive group of young adults. So congratulations, Owen, and congratulations to the entire class of 25. That's all I got. And then the personnel report is there as well if you have any questions.
I'll make a motion to receive and file the monthly report of the superintendent of schools.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is the medication delegation authorization. The next three items are standard annual votes, and I would like to take them together. The first allows for the medication delegation to the school nurse. The second is a permission for the district to enter into Chromebook leases. And the third is authorization for the treasurer to enter into short-term borrowing if needed. Are there any questions on any of these? Ready for motions? All right, let's go.
I'll make a motion to authorize the chairperson to sign on behalf of the school committee, authorizing medication delegation as outlined in the proposal and in accordance with Mass 105 CMR 210.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
I'll make a motion to authorize the Director of Finance and Operations to enter into a lease for district-wide technology as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
And I will make a motion to authorize the district treasurer, with the approval of the chairperson of the school committee, to borrow money from time to time in anticipation of the revenue for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2025, in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 17.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
I like your 9 o'clock selves. Just want to say that.
FY25 update, use of stabilization. I'm going to turn this over to the superintendent and interim director of finance and operations.
So in the consent agenda, you have a general fund report that the finance subcommittee looked at earlier today. We won't go into that. We won't go into detail. In essence, it's the same as what we looked at last month, in that you've got a cover sheet that shows a scary number at the top as far as a deficit, and then some offsets that really show the current deficit at around $43,000. Last month it was higher. It got better this month. We were going to run it again today. We didn't, because it's materially the same. And so this will continue to ebb and flow. The key piece we needed to do tonight is, in the past, we've either taken a vote out of excess and deficiency, or we've only had stabilization for a few years. So most recently, stabilization to offset costs. And so we are asking you again tonight, that the agenda didn't have the amount because we talked about that with the finance subcommittee. We're recommending up to $150,000. I don't know if Dave wants to add any color commentary, but I think we're both confident we will not need it. On that report, again, in the consent agenda, it shows other offsets. If we are in the hole roughly 43,000, we have potential offsets with additional choice revenue. We're expecting through the supplemental budget upwards of 235,000 or more on circuit breaker transportation reimbursement, and then again with that additional 150 from stabilization, that gives us a buffer of 417,000 and change. We will use stabilization as a last resort, and we call it Dave's number, that 42,933. Dave's hell-bent on making that zero. Whether that becomes a reality or not, we will see, but he is working hard to make it happen. So this is the last meeting of the year. Any votes taken have to happen by June 30th. So that's why this is happening tonight, up to 150,000, because there's no other opportunity to take that vote. But my guess is we will be reporting to you when the year closes that we didn't need to use it, but it's there in case we do. I should also mention, Dave and I have been talking about, along with Rich, about kind of the transition. Dave came into this 3.5 months ago thinking it would be, hey, just going to kind of mind the farm for 3.5 months. We've talked enough about what happened, and so that has been a very different exercise. So thank you, Dave, for your work in getting us to where we are. And so we've been talking through a transition from what he has learned and uncovered with what I know and how to transition that to Rich incoming. Rich has been involved in a lot of ongoing conversations. But I think we've talked about maybe that July, late July, August meeting, also having Dave do a final report, just kind of on a snapshot of how the year really ended, so that he can feel good about the fact he came in, he worked, and is kind of a final summary report about where the district does stand on his departure. So anything else I should add? No?
No, and I'll be my uncharacteristic 9 o'clock self here to just say that the motion that's being asked, or the vote that's being asked for, is strictly a defensive one. You don't have the opportunity once the clock hits June 30th, and you don't have another meeting scheduled until then.
Thank you.
I'll just say, whatever your list shows in the end, Dave, you should feel good.
Yes. Indeed.
Yes, you've gone above and beyond what was requested. So.
Indeed. And far above what I promised it would be. So
that's between you two.
100%.
I'm not
quite sure what I owe him yet, but it's going to be big.
You told Rich about the bus, right?
He's all in on the buses, yes.
You ready for a motion? Yes. All right. I make a motion to approve the transfer of funds from the stabilization account to the general fund for the purpose of funding additional repair and maintenance costs incurred in fiscal year '25, as recommended by the superintendent of schools, in an amount not to exceed $150,000.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is the subcommittee reports. I just want to thank each and every one of you for the work that we do on the subcommittees. Policy and Advocacy, Paul Golden.
We met tonight just to discuss any needed work at state advocacy level over the summer, and also talked a little bit about bottom-up feedback for the administration and the Education Commonwealth data that we looked at last week.
Personnel and Negotiations, Matthew.
We have not met since our last meeting. We have no future meetings scheduled.
Finance, Paul Mayette.
I was going to add one thing. So now that you've set the subcommittee, I think I said this last month, both TRTA Unit A and TRTA Unit B are eager to get going right away. So now that I know the committee is staying the same, we're looking at the second week of September to get an organizational meeting. The goal will be get everyone to come with calendars and get some dates on the book.
Paul Mayette.
We met today. The main substance of that meeting was the vote that we just took on the stabilization. We did not book our next meeting, did we? So we'll have to get that on the calendar.
So we've historically not met over the summer, and so generally when we meet for that, it would be in August. We meet in August, yeah. So it would be, by that point, we have, closing information. So we'll confirm those for next year.
We have not had a meeting since our last meeting, and we do not have anything scheduled this time.
And before we adjourn, I want to say thank you to Owen. Thank you for all your insight, and good luck on your next journey in your life. And know who's going to be the replacement for you?
Yes, it'll be Foster Campbell. He's a sophomore. Will be junior, so he unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but I think that he's a great pick, and I'm excited for him to step in next year.
I appreciate all your time. And I want to thank everybody here. It takes a village to do the work we do, and we're glad that Mr. Forget is at the helm. And have a nice summer until we call to say we need a meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Have a nice evening.